Okay, yesterday we did this routing part. Today we will go with useReducer hook of the React. So whenever I say use, it is a hook. So whenever I say use state or use effect, these are called hooks in React. So we'll see a new hook today, that is the useReducer. So let me start the npm start here. And I will go to, for example, the categories one, and I will explain you hooks here in the categories.
Sorry, screen is not visible.
Okay, sorry. I have to share the screen. Sorry. So this is the yesterday's project. I clean up the categories. It was all the code which I have written yesterday. So I will delete all this because I need to show you the hooks, and that is the reason I'll delete this part. Okay, let me show you the hooks part now. Okay, so what we are doing useReducer. So before going to use the reducer, I will use the use state, and then I will show you what we can do with useReducer. So for example, if I have a state variable called as count, set count is equal to react.useState. Initially I'll make count 0, and I will also create another variable called as, for example, name, set name, and I will say react.useState with some default value of empty string. Okay, so this is my categories. I'll put it in h1 tag, and then I will create one counter. So I will create one button which will increase the count. So I'll say button on click. So whenever someone clicks this button, I will call the arrow function. I will call the arrow function here. And here I'll say set count equal to whatever count value we have plus 1, because we are incrementing it. Similarly, I will create another button where I will decrease the count to -1, and here I'll say decrement. So this is the one div of buttons which increases or decreases the count from the state variable. Now another is name property. Let's create another div, and here I'll create the input. I will create the input box. So here will be input type equal to text, and value will be nothing but the name which we have, and on change will be, I will call the I'll call this set name. When someone try to change it, I will get e.target.value. Whenever someone tries to change the input box, I have the e as the event, and to check whatever user has put, I will use e.target.value. This is the value which user will insert into this input box. So I will call set name, and I will put e.target.value. So whatever user will put inside this input box, it will be updated in this variable. to see what is the value of variable, I will do console.log count is count, and I will also say name is name. So whenever user will change it, I will try to see whatever is there in the console.log. So let's check this one. I'll refresh it. Let's go to categories. So initially count is 0, name is empty. So when I try to increase, count become 1, count become 2. Okay, some count is 7. Let's try to display the count on the screen also. Count is, so here I'll say count, so that I can see count is 7. I can increase the count to whatever number I want. And name, I will put name like Jack. I can put the name as Jack. Okay, so whenever I change the name, it is updating here, and whenever I'm changing the count, it is updating here. This is something I'm using the state variables to update the data. Okay, so what I'm using is state variables to update the data. Like this is a state variable, this is a state variable. Now let's do same thing, but with the useReducer. So I will keep this category same so that we can compare. We can compare the difference between the two. So this is a category. Let me create another component, maybe categories 2. And here I will return, and inside div I will say categories 2. Okay, so this is another component, but in this component I will try to achieve same thing, but with the help of the reducer. And you will also understand how to update in the reducer and how the things work in the useReducer part of it. So you can use the useReducer in your personal project, but once you understand the concept of reducer, then when we will go to the Redux part, the concept is very similar to what I will be explaining it now. So this useReducer is a similar concept that we have in the Redux. Okay, so let's start with the useReducer. So to use the reducer, I will write like we use the constant, like we use the state variable like here. Here I will use the state variable like state and dispatch. Second parameter is dispatch. So remember, it is this state and dispatch, not the set state. We have seen set state, like, but in this case it will be dispatch. And how dispatch is used, I will explain you in a minute. So I will say state dispatch, and here I will say react.useReducer. So first you try to understand, then I will give you time to write down, and then you can also watch the video later and try to do this multiple times. So if you do only one time, you will not be able to understand it properly. Do 3-4 times. Try to do one time without looking, then you will understand what we are doing it. So here we were using useState, and here I'm using useReducer. Here we were using variable name and set variable name. Here we are using state and dispatch. And inside the useReducer, we have to pass different things. First thing will be my reducer. So there will be a variable called the reducer, which I have to pass it here. A variable may be a function, will be the reducer is a function generally. So we can create a function reducer and we will pass it here. And the second parameter of the useReducer will be initial state. Now what is the initial state? I will explain you now. So now I have to create one initial state. Initial state can be anything which you want to create, key value pair. So initial state is a key value pair of whatever you want to update it whenever someone try to change it. So in this case, what do you think? What can be the initial state? I have to make this similar thing here. So what should I put in the initial state? Can anyone tell me? Here it is object, here it is two different variable, but we have to accommodate these two variables here in the state. So can anyone tell me what should I pass in this object so that I can have these two both variables? Okay, Anand has answered count equal to 0, name equal to empty string. So initial state will be count equal to 0 and name will be empty string, like this, because we need to achieve these two same functionality here. So I have to pass the initial state which has these two variable name. If we have 100 name, we can put all 100 name here if we want. So initial state part is done. Now let's go to the reducer. Reducer is the function which I will create it now, and it will look like this way. So I will create a function reducer is equal to arrow function, and this reducer gets two parameter. One parameter is called state and second parameter is called action. The state is nothing but initial state, but when you will change the state, then the state will be the new state. Initially when I load the page, this state will be nothing but the initial state which you pass it here. Don't compare that this first is the reducer, second in the initial state, here state is the first, action is the second. Don't compare this thing. Just remember when we create the use reducer, I have to pass the reducer, which is this function, and I have to pass the initial state. Initial state can have 1 to 100 or infinite number of variables inside it. And when we create the reducer, it has the two things. One is called the state and one is called the action. State will be nothing but the initial state, but when we change the state, the next time it will be the changed version. But whenever the page will load, what will come in the state? It will be this initial state. And the action can have multiple, action is the object, so it can have multiple key value pairs. So action will look like this way. So action will look like an object, and this object can have multiple key value pairs. One of the key is called type, and here you can define type 1, 2, whatever you want to give. And then another thing will be payload. So generally we pass these two things, type and payload. Payload can be anything, maybe jack or anything, whatever you want to pass. So generally the action is in this format, and the state is nothing but this initial state. But when we change something in the state, the second time when someone will click button or something, it will pass the change state. Initially on the page load, it is the initial state. I'm repeating this again and again because for you to understand it properly. Now what will happen if I have to display the count and name? So I can display with the state variable. So here I will say count is, so to display the count I have to use state variable state.count. So whenever I have to display with this initial variable, and it comes in the state format. And there I will also say name is state.name. Okay, so whatever we have the state, we have to display that it here. Let's call this categories in my category 1 so that I can compare both the things. And here I will call categories 2. So categories 2 is a different component. I create a different component so that I can compare with categories and categories 2. Now let's call these two buttons, and we will see how to call the how to use the useReducer in this component. So on the click, I will not do set count because set count was the old version. Now we don't have the set count as a here. So whenever someone will, okay, count is not here. Count will not work. We have to say state.count. So whenever someone try to click the increment here in this part, what we have to do here on click so that it will update the count to 1 or 2 or whatever we want. Okay, so this is something you have to remember it. I will repeat this thing again after I'm done with one time so that it goes into your memory. So let me do it and then I will repeat it. So when I click the increment button, I have to call the dispatch. Okay, and in this dispatch, I have to pass the object. And in this object, it will be similar to this action object. So in this object, I will say type equal to whatever you want to give. Say, since I am incrementing it, so I'll make the type equal to increment. Okay, and then I have to put the payload, this payload. So payload will be, whatever count I have, state.count, I will add 1 to it. Previously what I was doing, I was adding count plus 1. Here I'm adding, I'm not calling any state account or state something, I just call the dispatch. And here I pass the type and the payload. That's it. This part only I dispatch like this. I can pass multiple dispatch like this. Okay, so something I did like this, and then let's do this dispatch again in the decrement. In the decrement also I'll pass dispatch, and here I will name something different like decrement. It should be different than this one so that we know that it is decreasing. And here I will pass the payload as -1. Okay, so these two things we have done. Okay, let's go again now further. Now we have the input box. So let's work on the input box. Now I will ask you in the input box what should be done. So make sure you're ready to answer it. Now, what should I put as a value? Can anyone tell me? So in the name input box, like we were doing this count or name or whatever you see here. Okay, so Anand is saying because name is not available here in the categories too, we have state.name. So we have to call state.name. Oh, Anand has answered it, and I will say state.name because we don't have name variable here. Now can you tell me what should I put inside here in the onChange? What should I put here? As we are doing dispatch here, so I want dispatch only, but what should I put in the dispatch? So you think yourself, what should be the type? Type is something you have to define. And what should be the payload? I want to know how will you create the dispatch. So what is the new name? You cannot put new name. You have to put the dynamic variable. So what will you put? Payload equal to what? You said type equal to update name, payload equal to new name, e.target.value. So I will dispatch here, and in the dispatch I will pass object, and object is nothing but type equal to some type. I will define it, and uh, and then will be the payload. Payload will be nothing but e dot target dot name, because we want payload to be the new value. So payload is nothing but the new value. This new value can be object, array, numeric, string, anything. Okay, so type is something. Type, Anand has suggested update name. You can put anything, set name, update name, or update my name, whatever you want, you can put it. For now, I will use update name because Anand has suggested it, so I will say update name. Generally, don't try to put any space here in the type, and keep everything capital. Capital is not the requirement, but for a standard purpose, I put it capital. I can put lowercase also. Okay, now still the project will not work because we have just dispatched it, but we have not used it in the reducer. So whatever we dispatch it, we have to write the functionality in the reducer to make it work. Right now, if I show you, I will refresh it. Right now, if I do increment, I'm getting error because I have not handled it the dispatch properly. I just dispatch it, but I have not handled it. Let's say to handle it in a simple step, I will first check what is the state is. State is state. And I will also see what is the action. Action is action. And I will return the state. When I will return the state, at least it will not give the error which it was giving it currently. Since I was not returning anything, so I was getting the error. But still the program will not work because we have not done anything here. I just put the console.log, but I have not done any functionality here. So now if I refresh it, you will see I will click the increment. Though error is not coming, I am seeing the state is count 0, name is empty, and action is increment with a payload of 1. So though I am calling the reducer, but I have not written any code, so it is not working. In the name also, I am not able to update it because I have not done anything for this type and payload. Type and payload. These are only dispatched, but not used. So now I will use them so that it should work. It should update the state. This initial state should be updated. So here I will write down switch statement, and I will pass the action.type because all the actions should have this type, and so I'm passing action.type in the switch statement, and here I will write down all the cases which I can pass. So, and one will be the default case. Now let's take the first case, increment. I will put it here. Let's take the second case, decrement. So number of cases which you have in your code has to be put it here. And let's take third one, update name. Okay. So we have 3 case statements based on the 3 requirements which we have. Now what should I do when I will pass the increment? Okay, when should I pass the increment? So I can say, now here I have to increment this count. Okay, we have to increment this count. So what I can do, I will say state equal to, first I have to take the current state, whatever state we have, and then I have to say count equal to payload. Count equal to action.payload because new value is coming in action.payload. But if I want to decrement also, I'm also passing that in the payload, right? I'm also passing that in the payload. So I have to copy the same thing in the decrement. So do you think this is right? Is two code which are in the same way, these are the two lines of the code which are same. Okay, so do you think we should repeat this thing, or it should be one only? Because both are same. Here I am passing state plus 1 and here I am passing count minus 1. So both code are same. So is it okay to create two, or we can create one and we use that one only? Okay, type is different, agreed. But this content is same. So let's call this content only one time. So instead of writing two case statement and blocked separately, I can delete this part. So whenever the case increment is there or decrement is there, we have the same statement, right? So if increment is there, decrement is there, it's same statement. Or we can do one thing, we will not do update, that is plus here, we will not do it here, we will only pass the type and we will do the update here. So here I will say action.payload. Here I will say state.count plus 1. And here I can say state.count minus 1. So here now it makes sense. For the increment, we have different line of statement. For decrement, we have different line of statement. Here only I will pass the type, and here I will assume that when type is increment, we have to add 1, and when it is decrement, we have to minus 1. So this makes more sense to me now, rather than passing the payload in these two cases. But the payload is definitely needed here because here name can be anything. But for the increment and decrement, I can do calculation here. I don't need to do it here. Okay. So I will go through it again if you have not understood, because this is the first time and this is little complex. So it will take little time to understand it. Okay. Now, when someone try to change the name, I call the update name, and we are here in the update name. Now tell me, how should I update the name here? Can you write down the statement? Looking at this part, can anyone tell me how to update this name here? Okay, I'll tell you because this is a new one. I will say state equal to, I will take previous value of the state and then I will say name equal to, now name is coming in the action.payload. Previously for this I removed the payload, but for name I have the payload. So here I'll say k state equal to whatever the state value is there, and then I update it with the new value, that is name equal to action.payload, because we pass the payload here in the onChange. Let's see it working and then I will explain it again so that those who are not understood, they can understand. Now increment count is 0. When I click increment, what will happen? Can anyone tell me when I click increment what will happen? Looking at this. My software was closed, so I rejoined it. Can you hear me now? Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so let's continue with this. So what happened when I click the, let me open this. When I click the increment button, let's go through it, what happens. When I click the increment button, a dispatch is called. So when I click the increment button, a dispatch is called with the type of increment. When we call the dispatch, it goes to the reducer and it goes to the case of increment. And in the increment, I take the previous state. Sorry, I am forgetting the screen. Sorry. Can you see screen now? Is screen visual? Okay. So what happened when I click the increment button? When I click the increment button, a dispatch is called, and that dispatch, once the dispatch is called, it goes to the reducer, and in that we get the action dot type as increment because we are passing increment. And here, because case is increment, I take the previous state. You know we have to how to take the previous state by dot 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 state, and then I update the value of count to the current value of the count plus 1. This state will be the current recent value of the count and name. That is the latest one. So whatever value is there, I update it 1, and then it refreshes this category 2, and we in the state we will get the new value. So the state dot count will get the show the new value. Similarly, when we click the decrement, we call the dispatch decrement. It goes to the reducer, and the case will be decrement, and we update the previous state and the new value of the count as previous value minus 1. When someone changes the name in this input box, I dispatch the update name and I pass the payload as e.target.value. Sorry, it should be value, not the name. Nobody has complained it, or someone has done, I think so. So it should be e.target.value, and then when I go to update name, it is the previous state with the name equal to action.payload because we are passing payload here. And it will update the name parameter in the state. And then when it gets updated, we get the new value in the state, and I can see the new value here. Let's take that into action, and then I will repeat the things again. So if I click increment, you will see one value is coming. See, increasing the number, decrement is decreasing the number, and here name is updating with the new value. Here also it is going same thing, and name is updating. So both are doing same thing. The difference in category 2 is we are using useReducer, and here we are using useState. Let's go through the steps of the useReducer again, and this time you have to write down along with me. If you don't have the project set up, you can write on a notepad or simple anywhere and do it later. So what are the steps in the useReducer? Step number 1, create initial state object. So you have to create the initial state object. It will be like this, constant initial state. I will copy it. I will not write down again. So it is the initial state here. So I'll give you some time. Write down this step 1. No need to write down this part. Just write down this one, or you can write down whatever you feel. So do this step in your code and make this as a comment maybe. Do it. Let me know once it is done. Okay, so Anand is done. I will assume everyone is done. Now what is the second step? Step number 2. Step number 2 is we have to create a reducer function, just empty one, just empty right now. Don't put anything right now because we have to create this switch statement based on what we have it in our code. Okay, so just create the empty structure like this and this. So like this you have to create it. So just write down constant reducer state action is the arrow function. Okay, so this is the arrow function. Just write on this one. Don't put anything inside it. Let me know when it's done. Okay, so everybody created this step 2. Now we'll go to the step 3. Step 3 is create a component and add use reducer line. Okay, so I'll do the things. I'll create the component. It can be anything. Right now I'll just say function component A or maybe component app. Okay, I can create any component and I will return hello world now. Okay, so this is hello world is returned here, and here I will just create the use reducer line. So the use reducer line will be in this format: state dispatch is equal to react dot use reducer, and in the bracket you have to put reducer as the first parameter. So you can put anything. I put the name categories instead of categories 2. I put the name of app here. You can put any components because this use reducer will be used in any of your page, and that is the reason I am putting it app. You can name it anything. Categories 2, categories 1. Let's put categories 2 if you feel comfortable with that. So I'll say reducer. And here I will put the initial state. So what is your question? I'm not clear, Ashok Kumar. So just create this component and only one line of statement because this return will update it soon. Just write down this part. Function component and this one. So categories 2 is you created here and then use it here. Okay, so I created categories here 2 and use it here.
Right, sir.
Okay, what is your question now?
Yeah, the categories 2 component is not created in the code, right? The new file, the JSX file is not created, right, sir?
It's optional. You can put categories 2 in new file or you can put it in same file. I can create all components in one file also. It's not needed that categories 2 should be in the separate file.
Okay, sir. Sure. Thanks.
Okay, so for the learning purpose, I wanted to show you both on one page. But practically when I go, I will create one component per page, but that is not the mandatory. You can create n number of components in one file. Okay, so I can create category 2 in the same page also. So this is a component. We will be working with different components, so you can put name anything. But write down only this line of statement right now. Okay, so let me know when this is done. Step 3 is done. So if someone has not understood this part, see, I created categories in this categories component in this file, that is categories.jsx, and I created categories 2 also in the same in the same file. So though categories 2 is a different component, I create it in the same file. And it is not mandatory that you should create a component in a separate file. If I create it in the separate file, I can import it here. But right now, to show it, I created here just for the purpose to show the two things in one page. Okay, so that is optional. I can create categories component in separate file or in the same file. Okay, now let me know when this is done. Anand says it's done. Okay, now wherever we use dispatch in the file in this component, we have to put type for each dispatch. So for example, I created one dispatch here, type should be there, one dispatch here, type should be here, and one dispatch here, type should be here. So let me copy this whole div now. So now step 4 is update or write your code in the component. So what I will do, I will first copy this thing again, and I will copy the inside return statement here. So this will be my code, and I will put it here. This is my code. I will give you time to put this one. So what I did, I already created step 1, that is the initial variable. Then I created the reducer, and then I created a simple component with this line of statement, use reducer line of statement, and then I filled with whole component, I filled with my code, whatever I want to do it. Once I do all the things, I will see what are the dispatches in my code. And for each dispatch, I have to write something in the reducer. So if there are 10 dispatcher, you have to make sure that all 10 are coded here in the reducer. Okay, depending on how many dispatches are there. So now write down this code, and then we'll go further. So let me open it here. So half of them is here and half of them is here. Okay, start with here and complete it here. Okay, so I put half here, half here. Let me know when it is done. Let me see what is the question. So we have to mention like this, export default categories 2, right sir? No, this is not the way you export. We exported only categories. We don't need to export categories 2 unless we are using it in some other file. But if we are using in some other file categories 2 and categories also, so only one can be default. So we have export default categories. But if you want to export the categories 2, I will just say I will make it. Let's see if export work here. So I will just export categories 2. I will not pass categories 2 in the default because default is only one. We can export only one default, and that we are already doing it here. And second one, categories 2 is we are exporting without default. Now when we will import it, we will import it like this. Import categories, because categories is a default. I will not put it in the curly bracket, but categories 2 is not default, so I have to put it in the curly bracket. So I'll say categories 2 from categories. So if we have two components and we want to use these two components in some other file, so the default one we will put without curly bracket, and and the non-default one, that is the categories 2, we have to put in the curly bracket, and we can use it wherever we want to import it. Okay, write down this one. Okay, so let's write down. Okay, let me know once it is done. Okay, so right now you delete all this, all this whatever we have before, what you are getting. So just delete that part. Just try to put. Okay, so right now just delete it, or put whatever we have in categories to put everything in categories. Okay, because this part we already did. Use state we already know what is the use state. So no need to put use state now. Just put this whatever you have in or categories to. Just put it in categories. Okay, so one person is getting error, so I'm just telling him. Okay, so is everybody done with this line of code? So for one who is getting the error in the categories, so just try to put all code of categories 2 inside the categories and don't use categories. Whatever code I have in the category, don't use that for now. Just do it this one. So because we need to learn useReducer now. So I just created two to show the differences. Okay. So let's do it this again because many people have. Okay. Then the last step is remaining. Sorry, one step is also remaining, and that step is we have to update the step 2 with all the dispatch which we have. So we have 10 dispatch, we have to update it 10 dispatch here in the step 2. So the step 2 has again to be done as step 5, but here we have to write down the switch statement for every dispatch we have. So here we'll say action.type, and we have to put all the cases here. So for example, we have the case of increment. I'll copy it from here. Okay, so what we are doing in the fifth step, we are updating this body. So we are using switch of action.type and we are putting all the statements. What will happen when increment is called? We update the state with count 1. What will happen when decrement is called? We update the state with count equal to 1 minus 1. What happen when case update name is called? We update the name with the new value, that is action.payload. So just write down this, update this reducer as a step 5. Let me know when it's done. Then I'll repeat this whole process. Okay, is it done? Okay. So let's do this exercise again, whatever we did here with the new file, and so that those who have not understood, they can understand it in a better way. So maybe I can create one more route. Maybe I can say example 1, and I'll create a file called example 1. So I'll create one component example 1, and that's what I will do it, example 1. So let me create a new file, example1.jsx, and here in the link I will add one more link for example 1. Okay, you can do this later because you can watch video and do it later, but just watch it again. Okay, you have written the categories, you know how the things, you have written all the 5 steps. If you have not written all the 5 steps, I will copy this and put it in the React group in Telegram. You can copy it from there if you want. Okay, so this is my useReducer example. I'm doing it again, just watch carefully. So what is the first step? I have to create the initial state. So let me create the initial state. It is an object. So initial step, maybe I can have this form. I will put first name, last name. Maybe I can say last name, city. I'm just using all text box so that city, state. This state is different. So let me put a country only because people will be get confused with the state, this state with the state of that one. I'll only put, or I can put address, whatever address you want to put. I'll put your date of birth. Okay, let's put 4 fields. This will be simple example with not too much hassle. And here I will say H1 my data. Okay, so first step is done, that we created the object, initial state object. Second step is we need to create the reducer function, and it will take arrow function, the equal to arrow function, and it will take 2 parameters. One is the state and one is the action. So this is all. We will put empty one. We will update this later. Then the next step will be in the component. I will put state and dispatch equal to react.useReducer, and here I will pass 2 things. One is the reducer and one is the initial state. Okay, so we have to one pass reducer and one is the initial state, which is this one. Now here I will put the form. Form has name, for example, first name. I will create input type equal to text. Right, I'll do this only, and let me put name equal to first name. Okay, this much only. So this is the first name, then there is a last name, then there is address, then there is date of birth. Okay, we can use any select box, check box, whatever we want. And here will be the last name. Here will be the address. You can copy this code afterwards. watching the video and copy it, practice it later. Just watch. That is much better now. Date of birth. So I create the different form. It can be very big form or 4 field form. And what will be the value? I want the value from you. What should I put value in each case? Tell me value in each case. Let me see if you have. Okay, type equal to date. What should be the value? And let's go to the on change. So on change also we will see. Okay, state dot first name, state dot last name. Okay, so value will be coming from the state variable, and it will be first name, last name, address, or DOB, which can be accessed using the state. So value will be state dot first name, Anand and Sonu, both are right. State dot last name and the state dot. Now tell me what will be on change. State dot address and state dot DOB. Okay, so we have value in each case. Now what should I put in the on change? I will get E as an event in each case. I will get E. Now let me know what should I put in the state on change. What E dot target dot value? You have to give me exactly what should I put. I know the value comes in E dot target dot value, but what should I put in the on change? Dispatch, update first name, payload dot E dot any other state dot that. Ashok Kumar, whatever you are saying is not for the on change. It is in the reducer. Okay, not here. Anand has said one thing, but I want other people to think differently or the same. Whatever you think, you should give your answer. Okay, on change we have to call the dispatch. If we don't call dispatch, we will not be able to update the state. A state can only be updated in the reducer. So we need to call the dispatch. So what we have to do, we have to put initial state, we have to put the reducer, we have to put this line of the code, that is our use reducer, with reducer as the first parameter and second parameter is the initial state. And this will return state and dispatch. To use the value of the state, we will use the state variable and whatever value we want to display it. Dispatch is used to update the value of the state. Whenever I will use dispatch, it will go to the reducer, and in the reducer we have to write the switch statement. So now let's see what we should put in. Type is update name, payload is e.target.value. Okay, so how will you get the name? So nothing. So if you put update name, okay, you are passing update name, so you can update name, but it has first name and last name. So you are trying to update first name or last name. Type doesn't tell me anything. Okay, e.target.name. Okay, Kate it said e.target.name. We have to use this one. See, these are the four functions. These are the four functions, and so these are the four functions. So either you put 4 switch statement in the reducer, but can we do all in one go? Let me show you first with 4 different switch statement, and then we will work on the one single statement also. So what we have to do to update the value of the state, we have to use the dispatch. So I can say dispatch, and here I will pass the curly bracket. I will say type equal to update first name, for example. And what will the value? Value is payload is equal to e.target dot value. Okay, something like that. So we can copy the same thing here, here, and here. Whereas here I will just change the first name to the last name. And here we can change update first name to update address. Here I can change first date of birth as DOB. And then since we have the for dispatch, so we need for dispatch switch statement here. Action dot type. This is one way, but we can write in different way also. Let's put first simple way, case equal to update first name, and here I will say state equal to dot 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 state first name is equal to action dot payload, and then I will do break. So I can copy this 4 times, and one will be the default, and I will delete this part, and second time I will say last name, address, and DOB. Here I will say last name. So since we have the for dispatch, I have to put for dispatch here for switch statements. Okay, so whenever someone click change this one, I will call this switch statement. I will update the first name with whatever payload I am sending it. If it is last name, I will do this. If it is address, I'll do this, and it is date of birth, I'll pass this value, and I will update the respective fields. But since all are updating e.target.name, okay, type. Okay, so since all are updating the some value here in the state, this is the one way of doing it. Another way is I will not do it. Okay, let me see if I can do for all or not. I can also write down the dispatch. I can comment this part, but let me keep it like this for now. And I can do like this also. I can pass type equal to update field, something update field, whatever a common name. And in the payload, I can pass object. And what will be the object? e.target.name is equal to e.target.value. So what I am doing, I can have this function here also. Here I'm not changing anything. I am calling same dispatch all the 4 times, because e.target.name, I can know the target.name and the value. So I'm passing the object instead of the only value, because in payload we can pass anything. If you feel this little difficult, we will do it multiple times, but right now just watch. So we are keeping the type same in all the 4 cases, and this also it is same, because name will come from here, value will come whatever user has put. Now since we have dispatch with update field, we need to write down one more case statement with update field. Now here how to get that? I will say state equal to previous value of state, and then we will get object. Action.payload is the object. Okay, so we can write down this also, dot 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 action.payload. So what will happen? It will take the state value, whatever we have, and then it will take this object. That means the first name equal to whatever value is there, it will overwrite with the new object which is coming as action.payload. Since action.payload is the object, that is the reason we will get it as object, and I can merge both using action.payload. Okay, so this is something we merge the state object with the payload object. Let's try to comment this so that we can test other use cases. Okay, let's do it again. Let me refresh example 1. So now let me print out the state value so that we can see what is happening. Whenever here in the state, I will print out to see what is the state value is there. Okay, I'll refresh it. So let me, initially state is all empty. I will change it. Okay, I'm getting error. Something is not good. Okay, so what happened, there is one, whenever we create this reducer, it should always return the state. Otherwise, we will get the error. Okay, if we don't return, it is error. Okay, always remember that. Okay, let me refresh it. So I will do S. You will see first name is updated with the S. Last name is updated with this one. And this one is updated with the date of birth. So what happened now, I am calling only the one dispatch, that is update 1. Rest all are not needed. And since I am passing the object, so I have to merge the object like this. Always remember merging is like done that. You can do previous way also, but in this specific case, when we have lot of fields with common intention, we can use this method. Okay, so both are the methods, or you can write a for switch statement and pass different dispatch. All is up to you. Whatever you want to do, you can do. You can use one case statement to update all, or you can write 4 different switch statement to update all 4. So depending on what you want to do, you can do it. See, these are the 4 fields right now, but when you go to the real world, there will be hundreds of fields in the form. Okay, when I go for my job, there are hundreds of fields. So I will not try to write down the case statement for 100 times. I will try to create only one, and I will use this one for all the 100 fields. Okay. Object cannot be appended with the array. See, both are object, that's why I did it. You cannot have one object and one array. That will break. Okay, so array has to be manipulated in a different way. Object is manipulation is this way. So if I have 100 fields in form, I will not go and write 100 use cases. I will use only one of statement. But if all are different type, then you have to write all different cases. But since it is a form field, we can use this last method to update with only one case statement. But in practical world, since your code may be very complicated, one case statement may be doing a lot of different things, second case statement will be doing a lot of different things, then it is okay to create different cases. But since everything in this form, everyone have the common intention, then we can use this last part only, ignoring all other parts. Okay, is that clear? So go through this example after the class and see if you have understood. Otherwise, we will continue this for tomorrow also, because I will be showing some more examples. It will be same, but since I will be doing more practice for you, because I want you to master this part, so we will be doing practicing of this little bit more, and we will tomorrow also install the parse server. So make sure your MongoDB is installed, otherwise parse server will be difficult to install. So what I will do, I will give this code in the React chat also. Okay, so that's all for today. Any questions?